I think for the single season, yes. Purely because he clearly wanted to get knocked out from Leipzig.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of FIF TV. It's me, Dov, he's Vieri.
Hello.
And we're here to answer some more questions on Serie A, because that's what we do every week now, apparently. Right, let's get straight into it because there's no time to waste. First question is, after Juventus' win over Torino, where they lost Gonzalo Higuain and Federico Bernardeschi, will injuries to strikers in particular affect their season, like basically ruin it?
Well, it could, of course, because yes, they've got a lot of alternatives, but they've also got a lot of injuries right now. I mean, we're talking Higuain, Mandzukic has been out, Cuadrado obviously long term, Bernardeschi could be out for another month, Dybala just got back. You know, plenty of alternatives, but if it's a problem for Napoli to have one man out, it starts to be a problem for Juventus to have 4 or 5.
It's a wee bit of an issue when you're going into a game, a derby game, and you're playing your left back as a left wing forward type.
Yeah, it turns out to be fine because obviously he scored, Alexandro, but you know Allegri didn't have any other centre forward to bring on once Higuain was had to come off because of the injury, and he should be back for the Lazio game in 2 weeks' time. Now you were playing Atalanta, both in the Coppa Italia and in Serie A, and I think it'll be down to Allegri really. He's very good at changing formation, style of play, and you know he might have to play a couple of games without a real centre forward.
Yeah, and that again could have an effect, but I think the way it doesn't. I think for me, it doesn't matter kind of what happens. They're a machine.
Well, yeah, of course.
They just. It doesn't matter if you're playing your left back up front or your centre back or your strikers. They just win.
In terms of Serie A, I don't think it'll be a massive issue. We have to see it might affect obviously the Champions League.
Yeah, well, they can't go top. I think without a fit striker.
Yeah, without
fit strikers, that would be a very big problem, especially because they need to get a result.
And that, of course, then could psychologically backlash on the title race as well. I think, though, let's not forget Dybala being back.
A massive boost.
It's a massive boost. Yeah, he is. You know, by far the best player.
It's pretty good. Right, so could affect them. So, but we think probably more so in the Champions League than in Serie A because they're Juve.
Well, of course.
Right, next one. This one, you'll love this one, Vieri. This is all for you. He is a commentator, as you probably know, and he commentated on Benevento at the weekend, who beat Crotone 3-2. And the question,
they're just a joy to watch.
So the question here is, who's going to go down? Because that was obviously a relegation battle, relegation 6-pointer, if you want. Who's going to go down?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, for Benevento, that was the last. I deemed that the last hope to stay up is winning that game against Crotone. They're still 11 points away from safety, which I found it incredible when I looked at the numbers during the commentary, because I thought they'd be a bit further up. I think they need to get results in terms of Benevento. They need to get results away from home. Absolutely. Starting from the Inter game on the weekend. If they start getting a couple of draws, even in very difficult games, then they might.
Well, they've got the perfect chance at the weekend. They're playing Inter, so I mean,
exactly.
You probably have said if this was the game at the start of the season, you thought there's no way Benevento are getting anything from this, given their fortunes. But nowadays, it's like it's all about this.
The truth is, with all the players they brought in January, likes of Sandro, who scored his first Serie A goal at the weekend. But to be honest, every Benevento player. I was
going to say, you had your tweet. Who else? Who scored their first goals?
Well, Diabate scored a winning goal, and also. Of Viola, who's a bit more of an expert in Serie A, but he's also got not more than 30 games to his name in Italy's top flight. But he got his first goal with a deflection. So Benevento, kind of a creature on its own. If they need to win a lot more than the others. Spal, Crotone, Hellas. Well,
the thing with Spal is like when I was down at Ferrara last week. Like one thing that kind of really impressed me, and I think we mentioned this before, is they play really good. They try and play really good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Really young team and they're dynamic, but it's just they don't have that final bit of quality, which I think that
wins you games.
But they've got if you go through the team, you recognise a lot of the players because they're all kind of players who were kind of touted as being the next big thing, or a new hope for Italian football, if you like. Maybe they've not quite made it, but I think that they've got that kind of young hunger. And if they can put a couple of wins together,
I think Crotone, I've seen them as a very organised team. Yes, they lost to Benevento, which obviously is a bad result, but we've seen
they've got points on the board though. That's the difference.
And they've got some players who do make a difference. They brought in January. I think Benali scored at the weekend. Ricci, some solid players for Serie A. I think the ones I think are in a worst position, and I've seen probably play the worst football in the whole season, are Hellas.
Hellas are terrible. I agree with him. Hellas are rubbish.
I think they've made way more points than I thought. Also because I thought that their players who could give them that extra bit of quality would be Cerci and Pazzini. Obviously, they basically have never played.
Cerci and even then, like one thing you mentioned before, well, Pazzini left, and so did Caceres, and Caceres is probably their best player probably at the start of the season. Yeah. So they've kind of like
great defender.
Almost resigned themselves that they're probably going to go down by getting rid of kind of big players, save some cash maybe.
I think eventually we'll have the same three teams that came up will go back down. And that's Hellas, Spal and Benevento. If one of the three is to survive, I would say Spal with Crotone then going down. But I think Crotone is in a better place than all the other teams.
Okay, so going from the bottom all the way to the top. Now, this is something we've actually done an article on Forza Italian Football, and I thought it's something we could discuss a bit more in depth, is Napoli's kind of apathy towards the Europa League. They don't care. So the question here is if Sarri doesn't win something this season, so basically if he doesn't win Serie A or the Europa League, would it be considered a failure?
I think for the single season, yes. Purely because he clearly wanted to get knocked out from Leipzig. It was too evident in the way the team played, and even in the individual episodes, like the single goals, the team just almost wanted to concede them. And I feel, yes, Napoli only have the team, those 11 to 14, 15 players to be at their top in one competition. So I understand the rotation, and I do understand that the second, the substitutes aren't as good as obviously as the starting 11. But I think if you hold on to both competitions, then you can make a complete decision further down the line.
Yeah.
When imagine being in a couple of months' time, you're in the quarterfinals of the Europa League, but in Serie A you're 7-8 points behind Juve because you've just had a bit of a couple of unlucky results. You maybe lost at the Juventus stadium. It's all feasible. And then in that case, you're like, wow, why not try and win the Europa League?
Yeah.
Whereas Sarri's been scientifical in his just like, this is my year to try and get it done, and just got all the calculations in terms of we can only play one competition, and it's down to him.
Yeah, they can only play one competition. I think it would be considered a failure given how well they've played in general. When Napoli are on top form, they're probably the best team. Apart from Juve, but one of the best teams in Europe as well.
In terms of pure style,
playing style, it's kind of one of those teams that you love watching because you're going to be entertained, and they do the entertainment and they also get the results and just destroy teams, like against Lazio last week. Where they did like with 10 minutes, they just destroyed them, and then that was it, game over. So I think in that sense, when you've got a team that is on top form that good, if they win nothing at the end of the season, then I think it can be considered a failure. And I think kind of going on from that, I think Sarri would leave if he doesn't win a trophy at the end of the season. I think he'd be like, right, there's no way.
We'll have to see how many teams actually would want him, because yes, he is.
Everybody will want him. Chelsea want him.
I know, but it's not.
There may be a job at Real Madrid for him. Who knows?
I'm not that convinced, but that's another question to
ask in the future. Another one. So there you go. So is it a failure? Let us know if you think it's a failure as well, or do you think that regardless of what happens, Napoli should still be given credit for the season that they've had? Right, there we go. Number 4, Vieri.
Are Roma out of the crisis? And more importantly, are they out of the crisis just because they found a random player nobody knew anything about.
Didn't play at all.
Well,
Cengiz
Under.
Yeah.
It's not true that we didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, we did. We know stuff about
It's just that when he joined, they had bought Schick, Defrel, players who were coming from Serie A. They spent a lot more money on them, and we all thought Under would have very few chances to play. He actually had a lot of chances from the start of the season. Di Francesco gave him a lot of minutes on the pitch, and now he's just become the next big thing.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Roma are now in third place after the weekend results, and I think at times during the season you get a player who kind of comes into form, and that kind of helps your team. So you might kind of have, say, for example, Dybala at Juve. Start of the season was immense. Just basically carried Juve all by himself. Stopped scoring. Then you get Higuain, who wasn't scoring, would start scoring. And I think with Roma, they've kind of had players who've been on form at the start of the season. They had a blip where nobody was on form, and Under is kind of almost by himself,
helping them out, get out of the crisis.
Getting them out of that crisis.
I don't think it's only down to him.
Obviously not. It helps
because it's also down to the teams Roma have faced, and they haven't bottled it. Because Udinese now is not the same as Udinese in December, January. Yeah. That has to be said. They played Benevento last week. They played Verona the week before. He's not just getting the goals, he's getting amazing goals. So, he is making a difference in the sense that he's not just finalizing a well-done team play, he is literally inventing them out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. But Roma have definitely, better physical presence on the pitch. I feel like that Di Francesco had almost calculated the fact that, we're going to have a blip and then we'll get back into form when the Champions League restarts.
Yeah, which is what you want to happen as well,
because
they're not giving up on their European competition; they're going for it.
Well, understandably,
and they could be the only team left, the Italian team left in the quarterfinals as well. So there you go. Right, now let's move on to the other side of Rome. Our last question, obviously, this news came out on Monday evening. De Vrij at Lazio will not be renewing his contract and will be leaving on a free transfer in the summer. And the question here is could this have an effect on Lazio's season, meaning that they'll miss out on the Champions League, given that basically for the whole season up until about this week they've been the team in pole position to get third place?
Well, of course now it's kind of a shock news. But we kind of expected it as well. I was
going to say, it depends. If you're a Lazio fan, it's like kind of part of the course, really. It happens every few years.
It does happen. I think depends a lot on if you'll actually get the chance to play, because Lazio don't have a replacement. Essentially, in that position, it's such a delicate role, and De Vrij is such a solid player and consistent player.
William Wallace just doesn't do it for me.
Well, they'll need to see the presence on the pitch, and then it could affect the other big players off the pitch. I'm thinking of the likes of someone like Milinkovic-Savic or Luis Alberto, who might have some offers already probably come to them, and then they could want to leave in the summer and perhaps start thinking, I don't really care too much about giving my everything for Lazio because I'm already set to join them.
I'm going to move somewhere else, don't want to get an injury or something like that, because players do think like that. If they get a move basically agreed but it doesn't go through, and then they get a big injury like Van Nistelrooy at Manchester United, it's kind of a big one. Everything's agreed, gets an injury, then obviously they bought him after he recovered, but then some players would have that and they wouldn't get that chance again. Of
course, and even if they're unintentionally, you might not just have the same kind of spirit, which I think in football, like, details do make a difference at that level, and between getting to the fourth spot, which means Champions League, and fifth, that's a very fine line. So,
and I think the thing as well, like we kind of hinted at, but Lotito's kind of past at Lazio is when players don't sign new contracts, they get benched. They're not even benched; they get put in the stands. Like with Ledesma, who eventually kind of Pandev's the kind of the more famous one, where he left and went to Inter, which is where De Vrij probably might end up going as well. So with De Vrij, kind of the same thing could happen as with Pandev and Ledesma, where he doesn't play, and then my thinking is that when he was out injured, he was so key to that defence, and it kind of collapsed a little bit when he wasn't there. And it was nice to be back. They've kind of got back to the level they were before. And I think leaving him out of the team could hamper where they'll finish. I think it's a big kind of risk for them if they want to do that.
Because it feels like the Champions League race will be, a tight battle till the very end, and every little point will make a difference.
Exactly. So there we go. Right, that's us done. This week's questions. Let us know what you think. What are your thoughts on all the questions? Leave comments in the bit below. Vieri, social media.
Of course, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and the likes. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Support us on Patreon.
Everything's in the description. So until next week, people, that is all there is for me to say apart from arrivederci.
Ciao, ciao.